miss. Introducing from Stuttgart, Germany, Baron von Raschke.
Baron von Raschke was the supervillain from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that I watched as a kid. He would scare the hell out of me. He was like a psychotic German who escaped from a prison. It was the most badass thing on TV. It was like nothing else. When he put the claw on sometimes, he'd bloody opponents' heads. I remember when I was a kid, we were starting to realize, hey man, maybe this isn't so real after all. Like we thought we had uncovered this huge conspiracy theory, like wrestling's not real. And all of a sudden Baron von Raschke's on the air and he's doing an interview. And my dad, I remember him saying, boys, wrestling may be fake, but I'd hate to meet that guy in a dark alley.
Always surrender to the power of the great Baron von Raschke.
The characters that were that much larger than life, you can imagine seeing them in a bar. They're just a touch scarier, you know, and a little less cartoony, but there's a grit to it, I guess I would say. It's not a Hollywood production.
All-Star Wrestling. All-Star Wrestling is sanctioned by the AWA, the American Wrestling.
The AWA is from Minneapolis. They started in the 50s and 60s, and that's where Jim Raschke, he was an Olympic wrestler. That's where he got his start. And he met Vern Gagne. He wrestled as an unknown for a while, but he wasn't very good at the interviews. He said he was bumbling, just, oh, I'm Jim Raschke, you know, and it wasn't going anywhere. But then he met Mad Dog Vachon, who was psychotic inside and outside of the ring.
This is gonna be special delivery. It's a pint box.
He may be
Mad Dog is a mad dog. And Mad Dog said, shave your head, get you a cape, change your name, we'll make you a German. He went up to Montreal, he wrestled with Mad Dog, and his career took off.
Why so easy for me, these Americans? No one betrays Baron von Raschke.
In 1984, I came to Minneapolis for the first time. I got my education in this place. As I came up as a filmmaker, my first music videos were punk rock. I did a lot of punk rock music videos here.
And it's great to be playing here this evening in the 7th Street Entry.
So for New Band Night 1985, I came up here with a camera with Rick Fuller. Here are these bands my age that are screaming about the things that are in my head. And it was no rules. We made our own rules. I mean, if you want an education in music, you go to the scene. You get in a band, you travel, and that's what I did. So you get up here, or you climb up from the crowd, and you do your little dance and dive, and people would catch you. I was here for Black Flag. I did my little thing, and I dove, as a farm kid does from Wisconsin, at his first punk rock show. And Dan Corrigan, famous rock photographer from Minneapolis, he caught me in midair and he showed me that photo years later. A fraction of a second in my life that was captured, which is very important to me, because out of that fraction, I learned so much about punk rock, social attitudes, DIY. I took that method and put it into music videos, and eventually we used all of that right here in the claw. There's a couple bands I worked with. I shot Babes in Toyland right here in the 7th Street Entry and in First Avenue. And one of my favorite bands when I first moved to Minneapolis is Rifle Sport. They get a special star right under the 7th Street Entry marquee. Prince, he gets a special star because this is First Avenue where he shot Purple Rain. And of course, if you look across the street, you'll see the mural of Prince. That top photo is one of our cinematographers from the Claw, Afshin Shahidi. I was casting a music video for Low. This was in 1995. And I went to a casting agency and I was looking for an old man, a gentle soul to hand out balloons. And I saw this photo on the wall of Baron von Raschke back in his wrestling days. I'm like, why is he on your wall? And this woman, the casting agent Babs, she said, oh, we represent him. I'm like, but he's a psychotic evil German. Oh no, he's from Nebraska and he lives right here in Minneapolis. I'm like, are you kidding? So I asked the band, what do you think of Baron von Raschke in this Low video? And Low, there's super calm, quiet music, the opposite of the screaming Baron. And they thought it was a fantastic idea. So that's the first time I met Baron von Raschke, and I realized his real name was Jim Raschke, from Nebraska, they say. The documentary was inspired by a play that Jim's son Carl wrote. I went to the play and I realized this guy has been in front of the camera his entire adult life, so of course he can put on a fictional play about his life. And based on that, we started this film. I was living in New York and I would come back on weekends and I spoke with the cinematographer Patrick Pearson about this idea of creating a wrestling documentary / recreation, a hybrid.
Cue the strings, take one.
We had shot a video for Low, and the Baron was in it, and Phil had worked with the Baron before, and I don't know who said it. There's a part of me that says I suggested it, but I could be wrong. I said, yeah, we should do a documentary on the Baron.
We did half fictional, half documentary. And we uncovered a lot of vintage footage.
It was just about us having a good time and making sure that every single frame is something that's interesting to us. Phil and I think we come from like the same like interests and background. Like Phil was very punk rock, you know. I was always very EDM. I started just like anybody would in the industry, and it's a constant learning experience. Taking what I learned from music videos and other things and applying that into the advertising world was a really big step. That's why I like music videos, because every single one, it's like learning film all over again.
He had a lot of crew people, a younger generation than me, and I had already been an established music video filmmaker. So I was just so glad that they could come with all their equipment, sound equipment, camera, and everything.
And it was interesting learning from Phil what he had done in his career and then applying what my aesthetics were into my work. And Phil was like a great teacher, you know.
And he's a very creative cinematographer, always willing to jump in and just go with the chaos and try to capture it. Patrick Pearson is an integral part of the movie. We couldn't have made it without him. When I was thinking about where to film these recreations, we needed a wrestling ring, we needed lights in the ceiling, we needed a big space. Right away I thought First Avenue could work, this music club.
We needed a place where wrestling actually would potentially happen. And of course wrestling does happen at First Ave, and it has for many years, and it still does to this day.
We filled this floor with folding chairs. We used the stage here to create a wrestling ring. And we got Brian up here to turn on all these lights in the back. Brian, could you turn on those backlights? So these lights were basically our set. And then we took the stage. We had these ropes with, I used pipe insulation like you put around a copper pipe, because we covered that pipe insulation with red, blue, and white tape to create the ring. But it's basically just ropes across the front. There was no turnbuckles or anything.
Action!
And out here, We filled it with folding chairs that I got from a church. And suddenly, you got the wrestling world.
In 5, 4, 3.
We turn a punk rock music club into a wrestling ring.
A lot of our casting was actually just based on unique looking individuals.
Extras who looked the part of the 60s and 70s, people I met in the bar the night before. Baron von Raschke would be up on stage. We had some stand-in wrestlers who would play the part of the 60s in Montreal or the 70s in Minneapolis. I said, show up at 8 a.m. at First Avenue.
And, you know, shockingly, most of them showed up. Most of them did. It was chaotic casting, to say the least.
We'd be shooting like 5 scenes at once. We'd take the extras and we'd move them to the back and we'd move others to the front. And we had a film crew. I played the director. Our assistant director played the assistant director. We all got in vintage gear. So it was madness, it was chaos. We had 4 cameras going. Everybody was screaming and yelling. I didn't even know what we got half the time. This whole movie was just a wild ride. I can't believe we pulled it off.
Claw was pretty crazy. You know, you'd walk into something every day, you wouldn't know what you were necessarily doing. I know Phil tried to brief us in, but it still would not be what you expected when you walked in.
All I knew is I wanted it to be wild, high energy, punk rock, scream. To capture the energy of the wrestling, I think we did that. We did a rough cut of this scene where I played the director.
Damn blood! I got the blood. I got my blood.
And your comment was, man, you're a bad actor. Maybe cut some of you out. But a lot of the people who we cast were our buddies.
Yeah,
Mark
yeah.
Carr played the Crusher.
It was great. It was great.
Scott Smith played Mad Dog
Great as
Vachon.
well.
Jenny and her kid Arrow. So she's actually pregnant in one scene. 6 months later, she's holding her baby. And she's going, kill that mother!
Keep it weird, folks. Keep it weird.
Yeah, we would shoot right in the women's bathroom. And that's what the wrestlers did. They would shoot in any location they could find for an interview. It might be a bathroom, in this case, the women's bathroom. We did a shot right here.
Right here.
Okay, so
Because Wednesday's show, we got Mad Dog and the Baron.
I'll tell you what the claw is. Here, Marky. In my hands, the claw is a nerve horn.
We did a scene here where he's practicing it,
Right.
warming up and learning how to speak like a German.
character figured out, Jim?
Indeed. I'll mess the ring up.
When we started going into the family story of Baron von Raschke, you realize he's sort of the Jekyll and Hyde of the wrestling business. He plays the supervillain, but he's also a really kind and gentle family man.
And it's funny because my dad, in the movie, you can see the contrast. He's like definitely playing, his persona is very heightened.
They gave us all this insight into the family side, what it was like to grow up in a wrestling family. A lot of this movie was shot by Bonnie Raschke, Mrs. Claw, the Baron's wife, because they would have all these parties where all the wrestlers would show up. And they had a Super 8 camera in the early 70s. So that became a gold mine for us to uncover the family story.
During the process, I was continually kind of adding to this collection of archival footage, and I was also just trolling eBay and places for actual film. And one of the things that I found was this print of the Wrestling Queen. The subject of the film is my dad's future partner, Mad Dog Vachon. He was training his sister, Vivian Vachon, to be in the wrestling business, and this film crew followed and kind of made this movie called The Wrestling Queen, and was able to, I placed the winning bid, stayed up into the night, and here we go. And we brought this here to Pixel Farm to get it transferred. Bill and I talked about early on was wanting to kind of capture this very specific era of wrestling. We had a digital copy of The Wrestling Queen that I had ripped from somebody who posted it on YouTube or something. And so when I found this film, we were just like, oh my gosh, what can we do? And, you know, we brought it here and they did their magic and all that red goes away.
If I were to get things balanced a little more like what it probably looked like.
We were able to get this amazing transfer that has so much detail, but we kept in a lot of the life, you know, the scratches and dust. You can see in the transfer there's a lot of green sort of scratches, and that's physical damage to the film, and we didn't mind that at all.
In 5, 4.
One of the scenes we shot here was depicting a 1971 match that was live on TV where something went wrong. Mad Dog Vachon got cut while he was quote-unquote juicing. Juicing is when they take a razor blade and they just slice a little bit in their head to let the blood come down, but they're not really hurt. Well, in one case, Mad Dog Vachon was juicing and he got kicked right when he was juicing and he hit a main artery. This was live on TV in 1971 right here in Minneapolis, and blood was literally splurting out. It's a crazy scene, and you can hear the announcers suddenly go, break character, stop the show. Well, the wrestlers just kept going, and blood is spurting everywhere. The audience was losing their mind, grandmas and little kids in the audience. I was inspired by looking at the vintage footage of the wrestlers smashing into the announcer's table, diving into the audience, hitting folding chairs over heads. It was crazy how they did it, and so we emulated that. I want to get these guys with blood, the craziness, behind. So he's like, ha ha ha, bam, bam, ha ha ha. Some people can reach over. Okay, so the action on the floor.
Fight, take 2.
And action!
Crusher, Stone Vachon out of the ring, around the floor.
We would get the actors who were playing the wrestlers to jump off the stage.
Hey, somebody!
I can't believe this. Oh my God! We need some security here, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is and he just smashed the man dog's head into the table and
Head on the table! Please! Spewing blood!
We had fake blood flying everywhere.
I'll kill you, dog!
Lift them up. And the whole filming that we did at First Avenue was madness. Whether we wanted to or not, our film shoots were probably about as crazy as the actual wrestling matches that were done back in the day.
First Ave was super game about letting us do what we needed to do, and I mean, it's an institution. They're so cool here, and they continue to be so. Well, if First Ave was having a show and there's fake blood everywhere, we'd stay later to clean everything up. I'm not sure whoever cleaned up the blood, but whoever they are, I thank them profusely for doing that.
For The Claw, a lot of this is vintage footage. I gravitated towards film versus the TV video camera. It's kind of a hybrid. We mix our recreations with vintage footage. And I gravitated towards old film. We found some 35mm film, 16mm. This is Pixel Farm in Minneapolis. Dave Sweet, colors extraordinaire, and Paul Sadiki. He runs this joint. And he's also in The Claw, playing a cigarette-smoking, cop-beating, Liney's cap-wearing wrestling fan. That's right.
Just like that,
Our stuff was shot digitally, but we would try to match the look of the 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter film.
A smoke-filled arena was like an essential ingredient. Like there wasn't a non-smoke-filled arena in this era. So that's what I remember, and that's what you can see it in the footage. That's what we were trying to create.
We knew going in that we were shooting in a raw digital format, which is just really stark, kind of like a television program. And we also knew what to do to create the film grain and the look that we needed to match the vintage stuff. The idea was, as I was saying to Dave, try to make it look like you can't tell the difference between the vintage footage and the stuff we shot, because I wanted it to be a surreal experience. And I think that's what wrestling is. It's like, what is real, what is false?
Here I'm doing that kind of that vintage feel here. Whereas without anything, it looks pretty, I mean, it's still well shot, but.
It looks very modern, and we knew this going in.
Yeah, very clean.
There's Paul and
There's
some
Paul.
of the actors. It's very clean. It looks like modern footage. This magic brings it to life.
Baron von Raschke!
This is where we took all this chaos we shot at First Avenue and tried to make sense of it. And they say you write your film 3 times. You write it in script, you write it during shooting, and you write it in post.
And I think we kind of got there because, when you watch the film, it looks like it's a huge budget, but there really wasn't one.
Mr. Director, turn the film.
The producing team saw a real opportunity to really lean into making this wild. Like, let's not make this a traditional wrestling documentary. Let's find like a really original way to tell that story and use Phil's style. So it was for me, it was a really interesting challenge, and honestly, both for me and Phil working together to kind of bring together those narrative skills. We'd just come off of doing Tuscaloosa, and then jumping into this kind of hybrid documentary and finding the story within.
And all of that was some of the stuff that I'm most proud of, I think, is just getting to know the Baron. He's such a nice guy. He's nothing like his villainous alter ego. But it was fun celebrating somebody who had created that life for himself and was a part of our abstract little movie, and he was all for it. He was game.
One of the aims, I think, was not just to tell my dad's story in professional wrestling, but was to actually capture an era. So many people who are going to see this film, their only experience of wrestling starts, mid-late 80s and onward, and that's a very different aesthetic sort of experience of wrestling. And my fond memories, and a lot of people who would remember my dad will have this different experience.
I think a lot of it had to do with just getting something done right for the Baron and doing a wrestling film, mind you, that was like nothing else. Like nothing else. I've watched a lot of wrestling documentaries, and I don't think they can hold a candle to what this movie became.
It's a real testament to how Minnesota kind of comes together to make stories. And that's what's really unique about this state is when people get excited about a project, they'll really rally around it, and people will pitch in and do whatever they can to try and make the movie get made, try to make it a success.
When I made this movie, The Claw, I thought, hey, this is the punk rock movie I never made. We'll just take the same ideas that we might put in a punk rock movie, and we'll put it into a wrestling movie. And we kept that attitude through the whole movie.
I'm proud that we kept going for it, just rolling with the punches. And I know that we all really enjoyed each other. Like, a lot of the people who helped out in this film are very successful in film right now in different ways. Like, there was a lot of who was in Film of Film in Minneapolis at that time, who've all become very professional in film work, and some are out in LA, some are out somewhere else. So it was fun to be a part of that moment in that time with those people. Everyone really still appreciates each other, and it was kind of a moment in time for all of us who, it felt like going to film school for all of us.
Postcards is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota. Additional support provided by Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies, Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien on behalf of Shalom Hill Farms, a retreat and conference center in a prairie setting near Windham, Minnesota. On the web at shalomhillfarm.org. Alexandria, Minnesota, a year-round destination with hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for memorable vacations and events. More information at explorealex.com. A better future starts now. West Central Initiative empowers communities with resources, funding, and support for a thriving region. More at wcif.org.